3 words, 8 letters, 1 meaning. Let's go.
Came a long way sitting in a prison, thinking it was the only place that ever fit in. Now Michael Molthan with us, and you know we got the vision. This is not a competition, man. It's all about the...
I said, I'm never drinking alcohol. I'm never doing drugs again. And when I got released, I got back to my apartment and I took 1 sip of alcohol and I was drunk and high again that night. I'm becoming this man that I thought I would never be, and arrived in a place that I said I would never go.
Politics and sports seem to make up most of talk radio these days, but a former drug addict who grew up in Plano is also attracting an audience. In tonight's WFAA original, Channel 8's Jason Whiteley tells us why listeners are connecting with him.
I've been through hell. I managed to survive, so I got a story to tell.
The songs only help start this conversation.
Gather round.
Michael Molthan is not a DJ, but he scoots up to the mic 5 nights a week.
And I need some relief.
To discuss topics that most people avoid.
We talk about drug addiction. We talk about alcoholism. We talk about hurts, habits, and hang-ups.
And he has firsthand knowledge from the life he lived.
And we're going to create the illusion that it's holding this beam up.
Molthan grew up in Plano.
That's called an inset door.
But made a name for himself in Dallas as a luxury home builder.
I didn't want to build houses anymore. I didn't want to do real estate anymore.
What he did was drugs and time. 27 mugshots over the last 5 years.
27 mugshots. I'm that guy. I'm that guy I thought I would never be.
5 nights a week, he's on 1190 AM.
Hope. Because that's all we're chasing, man.
And Facebook Live.
We just want some hope. We just want to make it.
Hoping his struggle connects with another addict out there.
We had a person in Ohio that reached out, and a mom reached out to me, and she says, my son watched your show, and he just handed me a bag of heroin and 4 needles.
After Danny and Hallie died, it became my mission to do something with the incredible pain and suffering that I was feeling.
Terry Bentley Hill is a Dallas attorney who has been on Michael's show several times. Not to talk law, but how addiction exacerbates depression. Her late husband, Danny Hill, the district attorney in Amarillo, committed suicide in front of her. Then, tragically, 9 years later, Terry's youngest daughter, Hallie, took her own life as well.
This is the catch. This is the hook. He talks about how his life has changed, how when he found sobriety, when he found the solution, his life has changed.
I want to be really, really clear.
It is raw conversation that makes many uncomfortable.
That's the disease.
For Michael, though, it is a new chapter in a complicated life.
The wreckage of the past.
He never expected to leave.
Texas. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Jason Whiteley, Channel 8 News.
The problem lies within. Because my whole life, Doc, I was always watering the leaves of the tree and complaining that the tree was dying. I was never watering the roots.
So you've said that really the street name for addiction
is spiritual strongholds.
Spiritual strongholds.
Yeah, addiction is the street name for spiritual stronghold.
Right.
False idols.
Yes, wow. False idols that we run to for the source of either my identity, my pleasure, easing my pain, whatever that might be.
To change the way I feel. To change the way I feel, because we want that quick fix. It could be work, it could be power, it could be exercise, it could be service work. The busy. I got to stay busy so I don't have to sit down and look at myself. And so all these things that we do, I do, and I find, and so how do I know if it's a problem? It's a mental obsession. Let me give you an example. Cell phone. Can you go without your cell phone for 24 hours without thinking about it? No. No. That's the mental obsession.
So we all understand.
Everyone's an addict.
Yeah, we all understand. We even have a term for, in our culture, I think here in North Dallas, we call it workaholism, right?
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that my consequences were so severe. Because my consequence, after my 27th mugshot, after losing everything and becoming homeless, living in a suburban behind the bait shop, at a lake. I don't know why alcoholics always end up at the lake, but that's
in a
where
van
we end
down
up.
by the
and I was
river
in a stolen Suburban.
Yeah.
And literally
You're in a
saying,
stolen Suburban.
I was in a stolen Suburban saying, I got this. With a bug screen over the window.
Yeah.
And I got this. But thank God my consequences were so severe for me to finally realize that God will allow me to have all the control I want to, for everything to get completely out of control, for me to hit my knees and turn to Him to realize I never had control. Let's break down fear. Let's break down this book. How do I get in the now? And I'm going to open it up. So get ready. My whole life, when I was uncomfortable, what I do is when I get in my head and I would go into the future, this right here represents 6:30 p.m., August 28th, 2024. Right now. I'm watching 6:31 right now. If I go in my head alone in the future, guess what I start feeling? Anxiety, paranoia, fear, scared. I don't like that. So in my brain, I'm going to fix it myself, so I'm going to shift the view. So I'm going to go over here. 6:31 still right here. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go in the past. So I go in the past alone in my head, what do I feel? Anger, resentment, shame, depression. I don't like that. So I go back over to the future, here. And I go back over here, here. I go back over here, here. It's still 6:31. This is right here. This is what's really happening, but in my head, I'm doing this game. Can you relate? Are y'all tracking? I do this game, and for me, at a young age, doing this game, I go, whoa. It created euphoria. It gave me this false sense of the now, because this quieted up and this quieted up. Is quieted a word? This softened. And so how did I stay here? I did more. Because when I drank and I did drugs, I felt like everybody around me looked. That's why I did it. Then I started drinking and doing drugs because I wanted to feel good about the bad decisions that I was making. So when I read this to him, and 4 days went by, it hit me. How do we stay in the now? The safest place in the world. Right here, right now, at 6:32 p.m., it's the safest place in the world. Why? Because that's where God's at. That's where God's at. See, the enemy just wants to change our thinking. The enemy just floats those thoughts out there. God allows it. I grab that thought. It becomes my thought in my own voice, and I'm off to the races. I struggle with it still today, as we speak. But here's the good news, is I recognize it. And I'll get so sick, sometimes I recognize it, I know what the solution is, but guess what? Sometimes I just like being comfortable, being angry. Because anger is a drug.
And I literally went into this little bathroom. I had to raise my hand to go to the bathroom. I haven't raised my hand to anybody. And I go into the bathroom and raise my hand, and I go in there and say, I can't do this. And I get bonded out. I didn't know how to bond out. I didn't know what all that meant. Had no idea how to do that. And when I said I was never going to drink or do drugs again, I meant it. I really did. With every ounce of blood in my body. I get out, I got drunk and high that night. Wow. And I've heard stories like this. People go into jail, get out, and they go, I got drunk and high again that night. I'm like going, you're an idiot while I'm drinking. You're an idiot. I was that guy. 26 mugshots later. 26 mugshots later. Broken. Each mugshot darker and darker and darker, baffling the judges. They chased me all up and down Interstate 35 and 45. And they always found me at I don't know why alcoholics end up at the lake. But that's where I was. I was at the lake in a stolen Suburban with a screen over the window with thrift clothes in the back door. Used to have a high net worth of 7 figures, and I'm like going, I got this. I'm going to make the comeback.
It's shock and sadness from fans and friends of singer-songwriter Demi Lovato. She's recovering after being hospitalized for an apparent drug overdose.
She was a really amazing, young, energetic, talented little girl.
As a childhood actress, growing up in North Texas, Lovato took drama classes from Dallas teacher Linda Leonard.
She's worked through a lot of adversity in her life and always come out on top, and I'm sure that she'll do that now.
I hope Demi's okay, and I hope she crawls out of it like she did before.
Lovato hasn't been shy about her long-time struggles with addiction.
I had the decision whether I could come out and talk about it or I could hide it, sweep it under the rug.
Her YouTube documentary inspired people across the world.
I went on like a bender of like 2 months where I was using daily. There's a bigger purpose for me in life than to use my voice just for singing, and I wanted to use it for more. And so I decided to be open about my struggles, and ever since then, it's held me accountable.
Drug addiction and alcoholism does not discriminate. It does not care who you are. It doesn't care about your race, your economic status, your celebrity, non-celebrity.
Last month, Lovato released this song, Sober, where she revealed she has relapsed.
I'm sorry that I'm here again. I promise I'll get help.
Then thanked everyone who is supporting her through her journey.
I heard great news that she's getting better. My prayers are with you.
Till you drop is a commonly used phrase for one of America's most beloved pastimes, retail therapy. But research shows that nearly 7% of American consumers, or about 20 million people, may have an addictive relationship with shopping. And as we enter the holiday season, Americans will be shopping and spending more than usual. Addiction recovery expert Michael Molthan is here today to talk about the dangers of excessive shopping. First of all, happy holidays.
You too. Good morning.
Nice to have you here. How does somebody know if they have a shopping addiction?
Well, you know you have an addiction if your life is completely unmanageable as a result of an addiction. So the consequences start outweighing the ways of life.
Okay, so let's talk, before we get to shopping addictions specifically, talk for a minute about where addictions come from.
Well, addictions come from, trying to fill that hole. You know, there's a hole in your soul or spirit, and so what we're trying to do is we fill that vacuum up with chaos, with stuff that tries to change the way we feel because we're uncomfortable.
So we're heading into the shopping season. It's enticing to go buy lots of stuff. How do you know if you have a real problem that could be an addiction, or it's just that you like stuff?
Well, if your life is unmanageable as a result of the addiction, there's a problem. So you're completely powerless over the actual addiction, and you're irritable, restless, and discontent as a result of it.
For instance, is that like if you know that you have a certain budget and you go ahead and you buy and you buy and you buy and you get your credit card bill and your bills are way over where they should be? Is that an example? Give me another example of what might qualify as a shopping addiction.
Well, shopping addiction is simply that. It's buying stuff that you can't afford, that you don't need. We buy milk. Okay, when we shop, we go buy things that we don't need to try to change the way we feel.
Okay, so where does you've dealt with your own addictions,
yes,
and you could perhaps share a little bit of that, if you don't mind, and talk about where people go to get help if you have an addiction, because it can be a very difficult thing to deal with.
It is. Addiction is very frustrating because I have to self-diagnose myself as having a disease. So the solution, what I suggest is to get honest. Raise your hand, simply ask for help, and reach out to someone who is in recovery that can relate to you, that can offer you solutions to the problem.
What are some of the best programs that you have found for dealing with addictions? If somebody's looking around and, for instance, on the web, Googling away and saying, I know I've got a problem here, but I don't know how to deal with it.
Well, Google 12-step recovery. That's been the most successful program out there. The most successful program out there is one shopping addict working with another shopping addict. That way they can relate, because shopping is a symptom. It's an external expression of an inward problem. That's what the problem is.
Trying to fill fill the emptiness
That's
with
right.
clothes or shoes or whatever it is that you need for your house, but you don't really need.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in. Really
Good seeing you.
appreciate it. It's a time of year when a lot of people can get into problems, and it's good to stop the problem before you get too far in.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
If you or someone you know needs support or solutions to addiction issues, you can tune in to M2 The Rock Radio 7 days a week on 1190 a.m. or watch Michael on Facebook Live. Go to m2therock.com for more information.
Keeping families connected is back with its third annual Creations of Fashion for a Cause. It happened Saturday, June 1st at the Westin Galleria, Dallas, 13340 Dallas Parkway in Dallas, Texas. Everything kicks off at 6 and we're going till 10 p.m. The third annual Creations of Fashion for a Cause. When I show up, God, I'm saying why. Letitia Scott Jackson's epic night of fashion and fundraising, featuring celebrity hosts formerly of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Phaedra Park, and co-host Michael Molthan, along with other surprise celebrity guests. So don't delay. Get your tickets now at keepingfamilyconnected.org or call 214-242-0995. That's 214-242-0995.
Is in full swing, but it isn't always jolly for everyone. Those folks that are recovering from an addiction can find this time of year to be very difficult when they're surrounded by temptation. Joining us now here in the studio is Michael Molthan. He is an addiction recovery expert who's faced his own battle with addiction. And Michael, you travel the country speaking about this issue, so thanks for being here with us. We know that the holidays are known to be kind of indulgent for a lot of people. It's a behavior that so many people participate in. Tell me a little bit about this Bermuda Triangle of holidays that you use to describe this sort of a phenomenon that goes on.
One word: fear. You know, fear is something that as an addict, we have a hard time processing. So it's the fear of seeing family, friends, and addressing people that we may have resentments towards, because resentment is the #1 offender. It kills us.
Right, and the three holidays that we're talking about, when you call it the Bermuda Triangle, it's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's.
Right, and again, a time when people are sort of celebrating right now, so it's easy for these kinds of behaviors to flare up, right?
Right, they can flare up, we can blend in, and it's a perfect time to also get clean and sober. They could also be a very great celebration for the new coming years.
Sure. Let's talk about some of the signs that folks can look out for in this kind of behavior when it takes hold, of course. You say to look out for erratic behavior, telling untruths, people who are lying about things, as well as isolation. Are these some clear signs, and how do you address them when you finally do see them, especially in a loved one?
Well, with a loved one is to address them and get them face to face with someone who's in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a great solution, is one alcoholic working with another, one addict working with another. It's powerful because we can relate to one another.
Right.
You know, the recovery is body, mind, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
The disease is the complete opposite. We look bad, we feel bad, we're lying, and we're not making sense.
You know, just a little bit ago, you talked about how this is also a good time to maybe try and get clean. So, I mean, maybe because we're getting ready to start a new year, you know, reset things. Is this a good conversation to have with someone who might be sort of at risk to these behaviors?
Absolutely. You know, family is powerful, you know, and encourage the one who is suffering from the disease to reach it. Number one, get honest.
Yeah.
Reach out, ask for help. And then this time next year, it's a huge celebration.
Sure. And just wrapping things up here, you know, you've talked about battling your own addictions as well. What kind of advice do you give to folks who are looking to take that first step towards getting clean?
Is get honest, okay? We have a disease. Recovery is not about getting good. Recovery is about getting well. So raise your hand, ask for help, reach out to someone who is struggling with alcohol, who is in recovery, that is in the solution, that's not in the problem.
Sure.
Because it's very powerful, two addicts working together.
And a real important conversation to be having right now during the holidays. As we mentioned, this is a tough time for folks with these addictions.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much for chatting with us and for bringing some light to this.
Thank you.
Gilma?
Thank you, Ken.
I got pulled over. I was intoxicated and had a lot of cocaine in my truck, and I encountered my very first arrest. And I went down to jail, and I had arrived in a place that I said I would never go.
That's Michael Molthan, aka M to the Rock, opening up about his journey on I Am Second. It was only the start of what would lead him to hitting rock bottom. He's here to share how he overcame and bounced back. Hello, Michael.
Good morning.
Good morning. So excited to have you here and to talk about this. So after seeing your mugshot, you said you would never drink or do drugs again. What made you end up feeling, or what happened?
Well, as a recovering addict, we say these things that, you know, I'm done. I'm never drinking. I'm never doing drugs again. And I really meant it. And then it took another 26 mug shots for me to hit rock bottom and to realize that that Christ was all I had because he was all I needed,
yes,
you know,
yes.
and that's where it took, because the pain got that bad.
Wow. So let's talk about, because you touched a little bit on how you had some substance abuse issues and that led into other things, which is hard because I think when people are going through that, like you said, it's easier to say, I am done with it. But when you get home and you're no longer held accountable by anyone else and you have to kind of fight those urges, it's hard to say no.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, because I had to realize that alcohol and drugs or anything else that was external trying to fix my internal problems are symptoms. So, you know, as an addicts, we get caught watering the leaves of the tree, wondering why the tree keeps dying. We have to get to the root of the problem, and that's what I did when I completely surrendered, to have godly men help me, you know, get me out of the bottom.
You mentioned the fact that you were arrested 27 times, which is almost astonishing when you hear the number. And so what about serving a long-term prison sentence really got to you?
Well, what it was I finally realized how to do easy time, and I learned how to live in the now. And as I was living in the now, I learned how to serve other inmates that couldn't read or write.
Yes.
So I was reading to them, and I realized that time slowed down, and it put me in the safest place in the world, which is right here, right now, because that's where God's at. So I was serving them by reading to them, expecting nothing in return. And as a result of that, the entire tank came closer and closer together, and we were doing church.
Tell me about that experience when you first read the book of Joseph, and you said you woke up out of your sleep and you kind of had this feeling that came over you. Describe that.
Well, it was actually the book Detours by Dr. Tony Evans, which is the story of Joseph, and I could relate to it. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had this overwhelming tightness in my chest, and I couldn't breathe, but it wasn't medical. It was something totally different. And as I exhaled and I took this deep breath in, I felt ice water coming into my veins, and I had had a spiritual awakening, and Christ entered into my life. Not religion, not church, but the true Christ entered my life, and I felt love. And something happened, and I was this new creature in Christ. But I was clumsy, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. But
it's a journey.
It's a journey, and today I look at life through God's perspective, not the world's perspective.
Tell me what that feeling was when you heard over the intercom, they say, pick up your stuff, you're getting out of here, you're leaving, because I think you also kind of built a relationship with everyone who was in the tank. You guys, like you said, you were having church, and so I'm sure it was also tough on them to see you go, right?
Yeah, I wasn't this jailhouse minister. I was literally just reading and writing for people, and you know, they came over the intercom and they said, Michael Molthan, bunk and junk. They literally had to push me out of prison because it was, I thought, a technicality, and it was a result of me forgiving people. You know, God set the bond, he gave Christ the key, and he put it in the lock, and he said, go forward, and he told me to walk. And so I made the journey 300 miles back to Judge Jennifer Bennett, just right across the street here at Frank Crowley Courthouse. And she said, I heard what you've been doing, and I don't want to get in the way, and I want you to pay it forward. And that's what I'm doing today.
Wow.
7 years later.
That's amazing, because when you did see her, she said, oh, now you're free. And you said to her, I'm already free.
I'm already free. She saw the transformation. She'd heard from other inmates that had been coming to her saying that this guy that they were locked up with has changed their life. So, But it wasn't me. I'm just a vessel.
People consider rock bottom a weakened position, but you almost flipped it in a way, and it's a powerful place. So what would you say to others who are maybe in that space right now who are hoping to flip it around?
Well, I realized that the rock at the bottom at all these times was God, so I stayed at the rock. I stayed there, and I let godly men pull me out of the bottom, because my character defects got me to rock bottom, and I was using those same character defects to get out of the bottom. So it's this cycle, you know, a cycle that we show everybody. So I stayed there and just lived one day at a time. And that's what I'm still doing today, serving others.
I'm so glad that God has blessed you in so many ways. This was an amazing story, and you've come so far.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us this morning.
A recovering addict sharing his story tonight amid growing concerns about people now smoking fentanyl. Law enforcement in Northern Virginia sounding the alarm about the new dangerous trend. Fox 5's Tisha Lewis joining us tonight from the news desk with more. Tisha.
Well, Marina, in moments, we'll hear from a man who survived a lifelong battle with addiction. Meanwhile, tonight, an alarming trend based on new research indicating more people are dying from smoking fentanyl than injecting it. This assertion comes from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, saying the illicit fentanyl has, quote, increasingly been cut into heroin. We're told it's driving the U.S. overdose epidemic. Right now, smoking has reportedly surpassed injecting as the most common way to take drugs in U.S. overdose deaths. So says a new government study. The study released just days ago examines how Americans took the drugs that killed them. The study says fentanyl is involved in more overdose deaths here in the U.S. than any other drug. We're told while early data shows smoking fentanyl could be less deadly than injecting it, the newest data indicates injecting and smoking fentanyl carries, quote, a substantial overdose risk. Michael Molthan found sobriety after a lifelong battle with drug addiction. He's dedicated his life to helping others by raising awareness and sharing his story.
Personally, it's impacted me in a good way because I'm here, thank God, talking to you because I finally made that choice to choose a sober life. But it's also it's a very deadly road, and our message is to give people hope that they don't have to live that way.
An international
Michael Molthan looks like any other radio host.
This is Michael Molthan, into the Rock Radio, coming to you live from Dallas, Texas, on 1190 AM iHeartRadio.
But what you don't see is his past.
I have over 27 mugshots and bookings as a result of my disease of drug addiction and alcoholism.
He was able to find his way to sobriety and to employment, neither of which was easy.
Once they check off that box as a felon, they know that their paper is going to be overlooked, and that's not okay.
Thankfully for ex-cons, finding work, good work, is getting easier. Thanks to low unemployment across the country, businesses are loosening their hiring restrictions because they need workers.
There are pros and cons, and really cons can be pros if they come in and really handle themselves appropriately, respond to the requirements of the job, and contribute to the success of the company.
And while they may not become models like Jeremy Meeks, at least they can become model employees.
They will have the attitude is, I am so grateful that you are letting me work for you, as opposed to coming in going, you're lucky to have me. What I challenge that the employers do is take a little extra time. There are a lot of diamonds out there.
And if they've done their time, why not give them a chance to shine?
We have these things that I have to have.
Today's Health Connection. Today, people around the globe are bringing awareness to addiction and remembering the lives lost to overdoses. International Overdose Awareness Day comes at a time when overdoses are on the rise in America, and health experts and U.S. leaders struggle to deal with the overdose epidemic. The battle against addiction is one familiar to many here in North Texas, and that includes our next guest today, Michael Molthan, owner and host of M2 Radio, the Rock Radio. Right. Thanks for joining us today. Your story is pretty incredible, and one that a lot of people may be able to relate to, whether they want to admit it or not. Tell us a little bit about how addiction played a role in your life.
Well, thank you for having us. And I'm a recovering drug addict, alcoholic, and I have a disease of addiction. And addiction is a disease that it's cunning, it's baffling, it's powerful, it's very patient, and it also speaks to me in my own voice. Mm-hmm. And so my disease tells me I don't have a disease. And it's very frustrating for the loved ones around us who are trying to help us, because we don't know why we do the things we do until we self-diagnose ourselves and say, I need help.
And this is something you struggled with for a long time in private. What finally kind of broke the chains?
For me, I had a spiritual awakening. You know, I have a spiritual stronghold of addiction, and today I have a spiritual stronghold of recovery and spreading the message. That's what works for me. So I have 27 mugshots, And this disease, once again, I was very insane. I kept doing the same thing over and over, and even knowing what the result was going to be, and I kept doing it.
Yeah, and at one point you were a successful luxury home builder here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and now your mission has changed, and you have a talk show. You talk about this now. What advice do you have for people who might be struggling?
Well, the first thing is to get honest, to get honest. And in recovery, the most important thing is we are not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well. So admit that you're sick, reach out for help, and ask to talk to another recovering alcoholic or a drug addict that can relate to you where you feel safe. Men work with men, women work with women.
And what about support from family and friends? How can they help if they may not understand addiction? We know it's a disease, but what can family and friends do to help?
It's a family disease. And so the family and friends, what they need to do is also go get support from other family members who have battled the same disease on how to handle me. I'm like a roaring tornado that roars through the room and we don't know what to do. But there's a solution, and when you have a family member and the addict in recovery working together, it's powerful.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story.
Thank you so
and
much.
continuing the conversation that is a very important one.
Thank you so much.
Christy.
All right, guys, thank you.
Next guest, has inspired me and has inspired others all across the country. Michael Molthan, Into the Rock, that is his radio show, and I'm so blessed to have him on the show with us right now. How you doing?
Brian, so good to see you. What a great setup.
You like this?
This is really good. It's amazing what happens when we just surrender and just let it go, right?
Let it go. He's got an amazing story. I know we due to shortness on time, and we can't get into all of it, but you are helping others around the country recover from various addictions.
That's correct. So we have a show called Into the Rock, which is in Dallas, Texas. It's aired on social media around the world, and it was a pure accident, and it started with you. And everybody needs to know that when I was released from prison, miraculously, on a paperwork error, which I call God, I traveled over 300 miles.
You walked?
Walked. Back to Dallas, Texas to go see my judge, and she set me free and said, go pay it forward. Went to my dad's house to check on him, and you were calling around going, where's this Michael Molthan gone, this luxury home builder? Let's be on your show at the time, you know, talking about business. And I came on a cell phone that I borrowed, and I told you my entire story of what happened to me of being arrested 27 times as a result of drug addiction and alcoholism. And you said, wow, when did this happen? I said, Brian, I've only been free since Friday.
It's incredible.
And so since that day, we've been just looking up and forward.
And that has launched pretty much your career as far as what you're doing right now, helping others. This time.
Why do you do drugs? Why do you do these things? It would make me so mad. It would make me so mad. And the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I learned, this educated person, by the way, this will blow you away, I never drank or did drugs in college. Not once. And the reason why is because I didn't go to college. So, when but you know, educated and I know business and I'm just gifted at that with people and doing that, and I was always a good person. And a lot of people that have a problem with drugs and alcohol, we're good people. David and I were talking about that today. We're good people. Recovery's not about getting good, it's about getting well. That's what it is.
You know, there was always that sort of underlining pressure to succeed and to really be at the top of my game. And when I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, I felt that there was something that took a little bit of the pressure off, took the edge off.
I started experiencing trauma at a very young age. My grandfather, my mom's dad, who he violated me. You know, he violated me, and you know, sexually abused me. And He was a raging alcoholic. And I heard the stories of how my mom grew up and my aunt. And then they would look at me and they'd say, everything you do is just like your grandfather. Your hands, your handwriting, the way you talk, you're going to be just like him. It was very confusing. And so I shut down. I went straight from high school to the pro golf tour as a caddy on the PGA Tour. You know, toured there for one of the best golfers in the world and over 5 years. And I got off the tour because the drug use was getting really bad. And that's when I got into the home building business. I'm creative. I love working with people. I love helping people. And I always hung out with like-minded people where drinking was very accessible. A lot of drinking was very accessible. The day that I abandoned Brandon, I'll never forget it. I was standing in the garage with 2 duffel bags, and Brandon's mom was holding him on her hip, and she kicked me out, and I wasn't coming back. That's where I started, running. In 2009, tragedy struck my family, and my wife at the time was, she had a massive brain hemorrhage called an AVM. All these dark feelings that I had hidden for so long started really raising their heads all at one time, and everything was being taken overnight. One night I got pulled over by the police and had a large amount of cocaine in my car, and I was drunk and high, and I got arrested. I got a mugshot, and I'm like, oh wow. And I didn't reach out to God or anything like that, but I said, I'm never doing this again. I've become that guy I said I'd never want to be, and I got drunk and high that night.
You want to do this? Are you okay? Yeah. Actually, go with it. Yeah.
Okay. There it is, there's holdover. That's where it all go down before I see the judge, and then I'd walk in here. That's where this was the decisions made. I'm done. I need help, but I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? Because my way's not working. I was sitting in jail in 2-man tank. And an old man comes in there doing life for murder. Said, hey, will you read to me? So I read to him. I read the Bible, and my life changed forever. All of our experiences to bring him glory. A couple days later, this guy comes in, and he's being charged with arson and murder and all that, and he has this book, and he says, I can't read, you want this? And it said Detours by Dr. Tony Evans. And when I was reading it, it was a story about Joseph. And I said, whoa, I can relate to this. This is me. I start reading this book, and it talks about the things that confuse me, why things happen, and how we use that for God. It's making sense to me. And so I got up one day, and I shared what I was reading out of the book Detours, and the whole tank came together.
This world is waiting for a generation of godly men who will work from the bottom up, personal, family, church, community. If you're a messed up man and you have a family, you're gonna help make a messed up family. You must say, Lord, before you, there will be nothing more important than the reason I have been created. Work will now be submitted to following Christ. That my family will now be submitted to following Christ. I will fear God. I will take God seriously.
Pastor Evans, the reason why it's so important and that he talks about it so much, the legacy of a man, and what that means is to take responsibility. And when he says that and he does it, it just makes sense. to help. And I get emotional because I see a lot of men out there that are lost. They don't have it. On January 3rd of 2021, I was in a dark place. And the last person I thought I would see would be my son. And he reached out to me. He says, "You're the last person I thought I would ever call, but I need your help." I didn't say anything magical. I didn't say anything. I was there. And January 6th, he hasn't had a drink or drug, and he accepted Jesus Christ. And he did that because he saw his dad's actions and behaviors. And he says, now I want to be just like my dad. The crisis today is the missing man. People ask about what's wrong with our country, what's wrong with our city, what's wrong with our churches, what's wrong with our schools. Why are people turning to alcoholism, drug addiction? Why? Because it starts at the house. It starts with the man.
Christina, you know this, but we release about a dozen new I Am Second films every year.
We do.
And each one has their own unique way of connecting with different audiences. But one film in 2022 surprised us at how it universally resonated with all groups of people. The film with Michael Molthan called Confessions of a Felon.
Yes, since Michael's story revolves around him going to prison, you would think that it would really only connect with those in prison, their families, and the friends of prisoners, and it did. But it has become one of the most viewed films in the last 2 years, connecting with people of all ages, all backgrounds, all interested in the message of freedom that Michael found.
Mm-hmm. We're pleased that Michael can join us on I Am Second Day as he speaks with our contributing writer, John Seidel.
Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much. Michael, I am so excited to be here. It's so great to have you.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's great to be here. I love I Am Second. I just love what it does and the messages it delivers, the gospel from all walks of life, and I'm honored to be a second. I think that's really cool.
What has life been like since the film came out?
It's been unbelievable. I mean, it's opened so many doors for Into the Rock. The amount of views that it got over all the platforms is just, astronomical, and so it's helped a lot of people. Number one, that's the main reason, and a lot of people have reached out to us and encouraged, to keep going, and also to reach out to say, hey. You've really helped me to get off drugs, alcohol. You've really opened my eyes about how simple you made Christ, and the relationship I have with Christ. It's not this church of Jesus or anything like that. It's the real Christ, and he loves me no matter what.
Are there any specific stories that people have shared with you about, where they were at, their rock bottom, that have just kind of blown you away?
Yes, there's a lot of them. The I Am Second film and audio was in all the tablets and all the prisons in the entire country. So that really touched a lot of people reaching out, basically just saying they didn't feel alone, and it gave them hope. And a lot of those people aren't coming home. That is their home. So it gave them a lot of hope, and they want more.
Yeah.
They want more.
Now, there's something that's always been fascinating to me when you watch your video, and if you haven't seen Michael's video, you got to go watch it. But there's a story you tell, right, where you start reading the Bible because your cellie, right, can't read, right? Whatever happened to that cellie, right? Like, what's the story there?
He's still locked up.
He's still locked up.
I don't know his free world name, but he doesn't realize how God used him to change so many lives, and to be really accurate about the story, the book that I was reading was Detours by Dr. Tony Evans. And as he's sharing the story about Joseph, I could relate, and then that's what led me into the Bible. Because I was a new Christian, I was clumsy. I'm not quoting scripture in prison, I don't know what I'm talking about. But then it led me into the Living Recovery Bible that for 10 soups, or 11 soups, which is $11, I bought from a gangbanger and started reading the Living Recovery Bible, and it just came alive.
I think what's cool about that, even just that little micro story, right, is God can use anyone, right? You don't even know this guy's name. You know, you don't even know really what's going on, but God used him.
Yeah, and what's amazing is that when Pastor Evans started Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship many years ago, he used to drive around in a van or a truck and pick people up to bring them to church. And he picked Uwe up to bring to church one time because I didn't know who he was, and Uwe told me who he was and how God used Dr. Evans to go through Uwe to me. So
wow,
and continue paying it forward.
Right. So so now we've talked a little bit about kind of what's been going on since the film. I hear you've got a book that you're working on. Tell us about that.
Well, we just signed with Krishanda Lee Perez out of Los Angeles, who is an incredible writer. She's very picky about what she wants to do. And my story really touched her. So we're writing the book, 300 Miles is going to be the name of it. The journey I made once I got released from prison, 300 miles. And so we started that, and I'll tease it, possibly a movie.
Wow.
Yeah, possibly, really, probably will be, but
yeah,
we're really looking into that. So it's amazing. Thanks to I Am Second.
So you talk about rock bottom, right? So what's been your message to those people who are like, man, I there's no hope for me?
Well, what I always share with people is that the most powerful thing that I said was, I don't know. I don't know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. I don't know why I drink. I don't know why I do drugs. I don't know why I get angry. And why do I keep doing it over and over? And once I said that, I said, I don't know, God started performing the supernatural. It was a true surrender. I guess we can call it repentance. So I truly repented, and I was willing to go to any length to get well. I said that as a non-believer, and then my spiritual awakening happened. But for answer your question, for people who are at rock bottom, is to simply do that. If it's drugs or alcohol, find someone who's in recovery from drugs and alcohol and literally say, I don't know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Can you help me? We are all addicts. We're addicted to sin. We're addicted to visible things to try to fix our invisible problems, which I still struggle with today, but I recognize it.
Amen.
I recognize it, and I give it to Christ.
I know that I need a savior, right? So don't expect me to be perfect, right? You can call me a hypocrite, because there are times I'm going to be a hypocrite.
That's right. And one thing is that when we turn our life over to Christ, okay, it's not about getting good. It's about getting well. And so many people like me, I was so ashamed of being bad. And I thought I was a bad person. God doesn't create bad. And so once I surrendered and said that, I'm here to get well. I'm not here to get good. I know I'm a good person.
Yeah. Where can people go to kind of learn more about the ministry that you've been building, and for updates, whether it's the book or hopefully the film, right? Yeah. Where can they go?
Just go to mtotherock.com is our website. And it has the I Am Second film on our homepage. That's the first thing they see. And then you just scroll down, and all of our social media platforms are there. We're very active on social media.
Yeah, I see on Instagram all the time. Yeah.
And now we have a nonprofit, Lee McGuire, who is the president of M2 The Rock Services, where we provide services to help people get into treatment that can't afford it, and also qualify. So we qualify them to make sure that they're willing to get ready, and we take them down the M2 recipe that's worked for me.
Well, listen, as a family member of a sister who struggled with heroin addiction her entire life, and who passed away, I just really appreciate what you do, right? It's near and dear to my heart, and I think, like you said, it should be near and dear to everyone's heart, because we are all addicts.
Yeah, right? We are all addicts.
So I really appreciate it, Michael. Thanks for coming on and sharing your heart.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. God bless you.
All right, Christina, we're going to throw it back to you.
Michael's story continues to inspire me, and his story, along with many other I Am Second films, are found in special resources we have developed for use in prisons in similar situations, which are available for any individuals or group ministering in those places. And you can find those at iamsecond.com.
And that is a great example of how you can use I Am Second as you interact with others in your life. Use our tools and resources. Share the films. Learn to tell your story. Get trained in sharing the gospel. We are equipping you to be used by God. That's what we want you to take away from I Am Second Day.
And we hope that you have also heard the message that I Am Second is a ministry of value to which you can donate. As a nonprofit organization, we have relied upon people just like you for the last 15 years to support us financially. Today, we ask that you join that team with a gift of any amount. And if this is your first gift to I Am Second, it will be matched 100% by an existing generous donor.
We so value your interest and support of I Am Second. Just like we said this morning, everything we do is meant to bring glory to God as we inspire, encourage, train, and help you take next steps in your spiritual journey. Although our I Am Second Day is set to expire at 12 midnight, the movement goes on 24/7 as you take action, following Jesus with obedience and purpose.
And as you do that, let us know how God is working in your life so we can pray for you and cheer for you. See you out there.
In 2011, I encountered my first encounter with the law. I got pulled over. I was intoxicated and had a lot of cocaine in my truck, and I encountered my very first arrest. And I went down to jail, and I had arrived in a place that I said I would never go. After my very first mugshot, I was devastated. It was on the internet, and I was doing everything I could to make this mugshot go away. And little did I know I was stimulating it where more people would see it. I said, I'm never drinking alcohol. I'm never doing drugs again. And when I got released, I got back to my apartment, and I took one sip of alcohol, and I was drunk and high again that night. You know, I'm becoming this man that I thought I would never be. In 4 years, I accumulated 27 mugshots. Each mugshot was more of a give up. I went into a dark place, and I turned to drugs and alcohol more than ever, and then getting rearrested. And on my 27th mugshot, I knew it was over. And I was about to go to prison for a long time. They transferred me to an aggravated assault tank. It was full of murderers and people who were doing life. I wasn't supposed to be there. I never put hands on anybody. I'm living in a 4x9 size room, and the doors are closed, 22 hours of the day, and I would just pace and pace and pace and pace. And this old man, they called him Ooh-wee. He says, you're doing hard time. And he says, man, they're gonna chew you off the bone. I said, what do you mean hard time? He says, you're out in that world. Get out of that world. And then something happened. At a very young age, I felt very confused. My grandfather, he violated me and started sexually abusing me at a young age. And it was the first time I kept a secret. I wanted this perception on the outside of our home that we were a normal family. But deep down inside, it was just darkness. When my grandfather would come over, it was a look that he gave me that was, God, it was creepy. It was almost like a flirtatious look. He would be the one that would babysit us, and it was terrifying because he was always prowling and following me and touching me. I was being told by my parents, you're just like your grandfather. Mannerisms, the way you talk, even down to my handwriting. And then they would tell me I'm gonna grow up to be just like him. And that really confused me. And my solution to confusion was chaos. When I drank and I did drugs, I started feeling like everybody around me looked. In high school, I attempted to take my own life. I got in my car and I saw a telephone pole and I just nailed it. Went through the windshield, woke up in a hospital. Man, I'm still alive. I'm gonna get in trouble. When I would meet someone and I felt like I was trying to let them close, if they did not want to be around me, I felt abandoned and my solution to that was radical. In 2011, I encountered my first encounter with the law. 27 mugshots. Aggravated assault tank full of murderers. Pace and pace and pace. Man, they're gonna chew you off the bone. And then something happened. I got this book called The Living Recovery Bible from a gangbanger who was using it as a pillow. This man, Ooh-wee, who is my cellie, which is my cellmate, who's doing life for murder, asked me to read to him. And I said, why? He says, I can't read, I can't write. And as I'm reading this to him, nothing's happening, but I start recognizing and feeling that 4 days go by and I'm not pacing anymore. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, because I wasn't anxious and paranoid. And I start reading this, and it's the story of Joseph. I'm like, man, this is my story. And on July 7th, 2017, I woke up out of a sleep on the top bunk. And, you know, I didn't pray anything. I wasn't like, you know, come into my life, save me. I just woke up and I sat up. I took this deep breath and I felt like I was having a heart attack. And I just go, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And I'm doing this, and Uwe's sleeping, and I just go, oh. And as I did that, this feeling of all this hate, anger, resentment, and just all these feelings are just coming out of my body. And I take this deep breath and I just go, oh, like that. And it was just like ice water coming into my body. And I'm like going, wow, I feel so much love. And I'm like looking around, and I'm looking at guards, and I go, I love that dude, I love her, I love him. And I looked down at Uwe, I said, love him. And man, just something happened. And then I started reading the Bible again. It started making sense to me. And then another inmate comes in and he says, man, what are you doing? I said, man, I'm just doing me. So this whole group of these murderers come hanging out with me. And I read something to them. They go, what are you reading? I read it to them. They said, well, you keep reading to us. And I said, well, why? They said, we can't read. And I mean, I looked up at God and I said, man, I see you. I see you. And I was reading more and more. And as I'm doing this tank starts coming closer and closer together. The guards were just amazed that this tank was so close and we were serving one another. And I realized that the reason why I was at peace and I was at home and I felt safe is because reading to people, for the first time, I was out of self and I was serving someone else. On October 13, 2017, they came over the microphone and they said, Michael Molthan, clean your bunk and collect your junk. And the whole tank is going, what is going on? I was released because of a technicality, a paperwork error. Once I got outside and I could see the sun for the first time and feel air and breathe in, and then fear crept in. What do I do? Where do I go? I have no money. I have nobody, no one to call. And God said, walk, not audibly. I used to hear people say that. I thought that was witchcraft. And he spoke to me through thoughts and feelings, and he told me to walk. So I made the journey 300 miles back to Dallas to turn myself in. That's where Judge Bennett was. And she said, when you get released, come back and see me. So I did. I show up to Judge Bennett's court, and she said, I've heard what you've been doing. Word got back to her through inmates that were coming to see her, saying that this guy that they were locked up with has changed their life. And she says, I don't want to get in the way of that. I'm gonna set you free. I said, I'm already free. And she pardoned me and said, go pay it forward. That's what I'm doing. You know, all the times I was hitting rock bottom, I was always digging to get out of the bottom. And what I was doing is I was using the tools that got me to rock bottom. I was using the same tools to get out of the bottom. Resentment, anger, I'll show you. I'm gonna make the comeback. This last time I stayed at the bottom. You know, I finally realized that the rock at the bottom and all these times was God. Why would I want to run from the rock? So I stayed next to the rock. My relationship with Christ is, it's a very intimate relationship. I mean, it's a personal relationship. He's my homeboy, you know, he's my buddy. He loves me for exactly who I am. He forgives me. I still betray him to this day, but I realize it and I come running back to him. He'll never betray me. He'll never abandon me. He's a very simple person for a complicated person like me. My name is Michael Molthan, also known as M to the Rock, and I am second.